Howdy, folks! Happy Monday. It's funny. I got a message from someone from a loyal viewer, and he wanted me to, because I say Happy Monday or Happy Hump Day or Thank God it's Friday, but I have nothing for Tuesdays or Thursdays. So I'm gonna have to. If you have any suggestions of what I say for Tuesday, like Terrible Tuesday or whatever, send them to me.
We can go with 2 for Tuesdays and come up with.
Yeah, but that's like a radio stuff, like 2 for Tuesday. What the hell? Maybe it's 3 for Tuesday.
Thursdays. Mike can wear his favorite retro Toronto Maple Leafs shirt or hat or
I don't have
anything non-gray.
What was bad about 2 for Tuesdays is why couldn't you do it all the time? Like, why do you have to?
Some places did do it. Some places
some did.
Well, you mean like NEW in New York used to have Scott Muni playing? It was always the Beatles, but it was like a side of an album.
Well, no,
they started doing like they played album sides.
Okay, this is the worst thing.
When we had albums and we had sides of albums that were played on the radio.
Classic rock radio station in Buffalo was 97 Rock. Big, they were the biggest FM station in Buffalo for years and years. Now they're still classic rock, but nobody listens to the radio anymore. And they used to do 2 for Tuesdays. But the thing that was annoying about that is if they did a 2 for Tuesday of Rush, it was always Limelight and Tom Sawyer. It was always the same 2 songs. They never would sort of broaden out and do different ones.
Buffalo never seems to get it right because it's either that or it's the deep cut station. And so if they play the Doors, they play like The End. And it's like, so.
Well, that was
I don't know if I call The End a deep cut anymore, but.
No, but that was a bathroom song, Russ. That was when the DJ had to go take a what. So
but they do that for everything. There's that one station that all they play is these deep cuts, and it's really like the 12th best song by a band.
Yeah, it got there eventually, but 97 Rock was always when they did like a superset or a 2-4. It was always if it was Genesis, it was Abacab and Misunderstanding every time.
Yeah, that's kind of boring.
All right, let's start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
So let's talk a minute about the World Series and baseball and strategy. Baseball athletes are better athletes nowadays. We know that. We acknowledge that. We get it. Are they better at baseball, or do they have better baseball IQ? The answer is no. Manuel Margot, when he was stealing home, which was great. I saw it happening, and I thought, this is great. The fact that Kershaw threw it high and the catcher had to make like a sweep tag, if you'd have gone in with your leg, you only have one leg to tag at. When you go in face first and your arms first, you now have 2 things to tag. And sure enough, they got him on the hand or the wrist. And he would have made it had he actually slid into home the way that most people were taught until the last maybe 5 to 7 years. And to me, it's just like, I know you can't get mad if you're the manager on air because you're letting these guys get away with it, but teams are letting guys get away with it. It cost them.
Well, first of all, I'm surprised that more people haven't taken advantage of Kershaw's, the thing where he, before the high set.
Well, they did. I mean, he actually did.
Yeah. Right, but I mean, in the past, I mean, he did. I don't know, and we only saw the replay 25 times, so it was friggin' ridiculous. But I don't know whether it was a verbal cue from the third baseman or the catcher, or he saw Margot coming down the line because he was in the middle of it, and then all of a sudden stepped off and fired.
No, they said Muncy said something to him.
Okay, so I mean, but yeah, I don't get the head first slide, especially at home. Honestly, you put the fear of God, and I know there's rules against colliding with catchers now, but you still put the fear of God in them if you're sliding in feet first with spikes.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying to do
you don't have to hit them.
Right, a Ray Fosse or a Ty Cobb, but you still, you're coming in running fast and you're sticking up your feet, and I'm not saying you're going to spike the guy, but still, it's going to be a situation where the catcher could get hurt.
There's a thing called a hook slide, which actually would have worked great on that. I'm not even sure anybody does that anymore.
No. Well, that's why they all wear the guards on their hands now, so they can slide face first as opposed to feet first. And look, we want to talk about baseball strategy. Dave Roberts was an example yesterday of the results not justifying the process, because he made moves yesterday and also in Game 4 that just you had to sit there shaking your head, watching the game, going, "What are you in God's name thinking of?" Like, good. Understand Jansen's your closer on Saturday night. Gratterall is throwing 100 miles an hour, and they have not touched him this series. Jansen got lit up a little bit the night before and gave up a home run in the 9th inning, and yet you turned to Jansen because, now granted, because Bellinger wasn't able to play center and you had to put Pollock and you switched Taylor, and Taylor ended up making the error and you got the error behind the plate. Look, there was a lot of confluence of things, but Roberts yesterday would just, look, he got lucky with leaving Gonzalez in. He brought in Trinan, which I thought was an odd move.
Well,
I'm sitting there going, you better hope this works out, Mr. Roberts, or this will be 3 times in 4 years that you've lost the World Series. You're going to eventually get shown the door because you can't get them over the hump.
Well, there are 2 issues, and both of them stem from analytics. And this is why, especially in baseball, I friggin' hate the analytical use in baseball. I understand the percentages. It works most of the time, but sometimes there's common sense that you just don't do it. Okay, in Game 4, they bring in Trinan, and I think he put on 2 guys, and a left-handed batter, I think it was Lau, was up, and they bring in what's his name? Oh, geez. They bring in another righty. I can't think of his name. Baez. They bring in Baez. And Baez's statistics against left-handed, he had an average of 105. And of course, Lau hits a 3-run home run to put Tampa Bay up 5-4. Now I'm thinking, okay, they're bringing in Baez. They must not have a lefty in the bullpen that's good. They bring in Kolarek later, and Kolarek gets 3 guys out. I think 2 of them were lefties with no problem. So they should have brought in Kolarek at that point. But what I think they were doing is they didn't want Kolarek to come in there because he had to face 3 batters and there was a righty coming up after Lau. And I'm like, oh my God. I mean, so that rule is in effect, but give me a break. And then on top of that, Roberts pulls Kershaw after 88 pitches?
85 pitches.
And he pulled Urias in Game 4 after 70 or something? Yeah. I mean, my God, what the freak are you doing?
Yeah, it's crazy. I do want to answer Funky too. I agree. Babe Ruth is the greatest baseball player of all time. I've written about it, talked about it. You get no argument out of me.
Yeah, because he more than likely would have been a Hall of Fame pitcher had he not been able to hit the ball out of the park. I mean, he had a World Series record that lasted, I think, until Oral Hershiser or something like that. The lefty record. When he was 37 or 38, he still hit 354, which that was when they sent him to the Fat Farm. And you got to remember, him at 38, that's a rough 38, and he hit in the 350s. Just don't.
I love Ruth. I'm a little partial to Mays, though, given the broad skill set that he had also. So
that's fine.
Yeah. Just don't watch the John Goodman movie.
Yeah, well, that's true. But again, yeah, I mean, Kershaw, the interesting part they said that Robert said that this was the game plan originally. But you know what? Why don't you base it on how the game is going? He just got the first 2 guys out in the 6th on 2 pitches. Yeah. Why then are you? I understand if he was struggling, like you're right. I understand if he was struggling, but it just shakes your head. Look, yesterday the guys he brought in yesterday. I'm going. You're bringing in Gonzalez in this moment. You're bringing in other guys in this moment. Look. End result ended up working out. Didn't have the process. I think Snell actually shuts them down in Game 6.
You know what I think?
In Game 7.
I don't know who's pulling the strings, but I think this is a lot like the Mets. And Dave Roberts has an analytic script that's handed to him, and he follows it. Right. And I think this was proof of that because we know that the Mets were doing that this year and the last couple of years, and I think the Dodgers are doing it too.
Yankees did it also with Boone. I mean, there was no question in my mind that Cashman can say he wasn't a puppet, but
that Game 2 opener thing with Debbie Garcia was idiotic. And it's Gonsolin versus Snell in Game 6, and then Game 7 I think would be Buehler. And obviously all hands will be on deck in the Game 7 if that happens.
Well, that's where they have the edge. Like with Buehler going Game 7, that's a big edge for them.
Yeah, and I mean the only thing that could screw up Kershaw not getting the MVP right now is if he comes in Game 7 and blows it. But for his sake, I hope it doesn't happen because I
think Justin Turner is going to get a lot of votes also.
Yes, and Corey Seager too. All right, hello Hockey World. Today is Monday, October 26th, 2020.
I'm Jan Levine.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. All right, we're going to start with some signings. Obviously salary arbitration hearings are going, but I hope that I hope the arbitrator does not get money per hearing because they never get them. It's like I hope they're just getting paid on a flat. Playing on a flat.
I think the minute they get the case, they get paid.
Okay, good. I'm for
them. I can't
imagine
they would say, "Oh, well, look, we came to an agreement. We don't have to pay you now."
Yeah, you get an appearance.
These are like judges and high-ranking lawyers. They're getting paid.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll start with the Sabres. They had 2 signings. I'll start with the Reinhart one because this has a lot of interesting permutations to it, Russ. Yep. Reinhart is he scored 20 goals or over 20 goals 4 of his 5 seasons. Remarkably consistent performer. Not spectacular, but I think people are colored by the fact that he was a 2nd overall pick.
Yeah, you got to forget that. He's a good player, though.
Yeah, a lot of people consider him a little bit of a disappointment here, and obviously compared to Eichel, he's not. He's 2nd leading scorer on the team this year, over 20 goals, 50 points. He's 2 years away from being an unrestricted free agent. There was some talk of, well, will they trade him or will they sign him to a long-term extension? Well, they signed him to a 1-year deal for $5.2 million. I get the feeling because 5.2 on a 1-year deal is fairly hefty. That might have been the amount for Reinhart on a long-term deal. And to take a 1-year deal, he expected to get paid at that amount.
I look at that and I said, man, they got Taylor Hall, so now they had to sign Reinhart. So they basically told him, look, we're going to pay you for 1 more year because we're now going for it, and we realize we're better with you than without you. But if Taylor Hall wasn't there, this would be a different deal. They may have already traded him if Taylor Hall wasn't there, but now they're going to keep him for 1 more year. Maybe they'll trade him at the deadline. Maybe they'll trade him to somebody else over the summer, and they'll deal with the RFA. But I don't expect him to be a Sabre after this year. No way, no how.
Yeah, Jan, the feeling I got was, okay, they signed Hall to the 1-year deal. They signed Reinhart to the 1-year deal. Reinhart's an RFA with an arbitration year before he goes UFA in 2022. If Hall decides he wants to stay in Buffalo, there's their opening. They can basically trade Reinhart as an RFA and re-sign Hall and have $5 million in cap space that they would have used toward Reinhart towards Hall. It's going to cost them more than that, but I think it gives them flexibility depending on what Hall wants to do.
To a certain extent. I do think you may see Reinhart on the right side of the first line with Hall and Eichel, which clearly that's kind of how they sold it to him a little bit because that gives him an opportunity to post bigger numbers and raise his value. Yeah, it may depend on what Hall, but look, if there's chemistry amongst the 3 of them, right? And if Cousins proves he can fill a top 6 or top 9 type role, I would say there's still an outside shot that Reinhart comes back, especially if that top line ends up being the driving force that I think that they may hope they would be. But it also may end up that he may price himself out of Buffalo's price range by having the kind of potential season he's going to have if he ends up skating with Hall and Eichel.
Yep, I think that's probably likely. Like that's what I would expect would happen. And then the other part is I don't think he's going to want to be there anymore because he was looking for a multi-year deal here of some sort. And I'm going to just guess that the Sabres had no interest in that.
I wouldn't be surprised if they put Reinhart on the line with Skinner and Stahl to give them a really good second line, then maybe flip Olofsson over.
Yeah, but Mike, what about that, right? Reinhart was looking for a multi-year deal here.
Yeah, I think so. But I don't think I think he was. I get the feeling that he wasn't expecting it out of the Sabres with obviously the questions about league revenue, the questions about the season. I know that there's been a lot of talk about the Pagulas not wanting the season to start unless they have people in the stands because of money situations. So, yeah, I didn't think. And that's been the common thread with all of the deals that they've signed have been relatively short-term deals. Even the Cody Eakin one was, I think, 2 years on a free agent deal. So, now they did the other signing was Linus.
Well, hold on. Before the other signing, the other thing that they made a point of saying, and the Sabres tweeted this, is center Sam Reinhart.
Right. He's not I know.
This is what the Sabres tweeted. So clearly, this plays into the salary they paid him too, because I think they plan on using him or trying him again in that position.
Okay, this is the weird thing. He's listed on the NHL website at center. He's listed on HockeyDB at center. He's played about 5 games at center. He's played mostly right wing for them.
I know that, but I don't know.
I don't know why. I don't know why that's the case. But
I mean, look, it's right there.
Oh, I know. I'm not
center Sam Reinhart.
Right, but he's played right wing.
I know.
So I don't get that, and I don't think especially with the addition of Stahl that they're going to move him to center. I think they're going to keep him on the wing, and either he stays with Eichel or he plays on that second line. But and Jan, I don't know about Cousins because everything is up in the air right now. Cousins probably, if he's young enough, can play for Team Canada at the World Junior. I don't think
he's young enough.
Yeah, I don't think so though. I think his birthday. No, you're right. February birthday. Yeah. So yeah, he could play at the World Junior. So he'll probably do that. But I don't know whether if he's going to be a third liner in Buffalo, depending on what happens with the American Hockey League or the WHL, he could go back for another year. I mean, we don't know. Everything is so up in the air right now. The other signing was Linus Ullmark, the Sabres goaltender, who, if you look at his stats and you look how bad the Sabres were last year, his stats are pretty good. He had a .915 save percentage, had a winning record, goals against, I think it was 2.69. Now, the ask from Ullmark was 4.1. The offer from the Sabres was 1.8. They settled on 2.6. 4.1 would have made him the 25th highest paid goalie. And I think he's better than 25th best goaltender. So even the 4.1 would have been reasonable, but they got him at 2.6. And I think the reason they got him at that low amount, Russ, is that he's a UFA at the end of the year. They may have wanted him on a 2-year deal, and that was a settlement.
I mean, I think that's part of it, but I also think it's service time. Like, he's played less than 100 games in the NHL, and so when you're talking about him making that kind of money, like with those other guys, all those goalies have played more games than him at the NHL level, and that plays in, and that does play into it when you go into arbitration.
Jan, what do you think?
If you were going to rank him and go through all the goalies, even the ones that are coming up, the rookies and everything else, I'm not sure you get him a lot higher than 25th right now.
I agree.
Right, so that $4 million ask is a bit high in my opinion. Now, granted, he probably asked that, quite cognizant of where Buffalo would come in, hoping that if we ended up going to arbitration and the arbitrator awarded it, it would end up more in the midpoint as opposed to where he landed.
It's a prove-it deal. I mean, basically, but
if he's a UFA, right, he can just walk out the door. So,
well, the funny thing is, and I don't think that they're going to use the buyout window. At least there hasn't been any talk of it. I mean, the guy that they should buy out is Carter Hutton, but they're probably not going to because for some reason the Pagulas have an issue with buying out players. They just don't like to do it. But if you look at their situation after this year, both their goalies are UFA. So, and I don't think it would be extremely optimistic for us to say that Pekka Luukkonen is going to be ready for next year, especially if the AHL doesn't play or they play a shortened season. So, more than likely, either they're going to re-sign Ullmark if he has a good year, or they're going to be shopping for a goalie on the free agent market.
No, I think they'll re-sign Ullmark. I think they'll see where Pekka Luukkonen's at after the year, or even where Ullmark is. This is the only unsettling thing about the Sabres. Again, I know they have enough money to get Olofsson under, but I really would call up Craig Anderson and say, hey, look, we're not set for our goalie. Come in at the minimum here, and you might be able to get a starter's job here, or at least split the net.
It wouldn't cost them anything.
I know.
Do you think Craig Anderson is an upgrade over Carter Hutton? I do.
Oh, absolutely. It's not even a question.
If you buy out,
Anderson did not look particularly good last year, Russ.
No, but again,
he breaks down. He's injured. He's old.
The year before, he was really good. Ottawa didn't have much going.
He's been very up and down the last 4 or 5 years. Look, when he's on, he's
always been like that.
Right? Again, look, they may bring him in, and look, he's not going to get a ton of offers. It looks like, right? You probably get him 1 year, $1 million, maybe $1.5 million. Maybe you can probably get him.
You might be able to get him for $1 million.
Right. So in terms of that, if you think right, but then the show it deal that you gave to Allmark now kind of becomes null and void, because if Anderson's coming in, you're going to use him and play him as the starter, which means the other two guys are in essence relegated to the background, one more so than the other.
I mean, here's what I would also say. He played 58 games 3 years ago, then 50. Like, this is a 37-year-old guy at the time, 36-year-old, 37. That's crazy.
And how bad is Ottawa's defense?
Right.
So, I think he could play 40 games and Allmark could play 40, and you're going to get a better goaltending performance than you would out of.
So you are saying it's going to be an 82-game season, Mike?
Well,
you just said it.
Well, okay, from my mouth to God's ear.
Just say 50% of the contest. Just hedge yourself that way. It's just easier for us.
The other signing, it wasn't. I don't believe. Oh no, it was. He was scheduled on November the 8th. Chris Tierney signs a 2-year, $7 million deal with the Senators. So that's a $3.5 million AAV. Tierney had a good year for the Sens. Apparently, they like his work ethic. So, and again, with their situation in terms of cap, getting somebody signed for a short-term deal is a smart thing. Yeah, 37 points in 71 games. What are your thoughts on Tierney, Russ?
On who? Sorry,
Tierney.
Well, Tierney. I like Tierney. I liked him when he was on the Sharks. I liked him before he made it to the NHL. He's been getting better every year. Now, he's never going to be like a 50-point guy. I want to say he had about 35, 37. And even in my own league, I actually had to trade him, but I had him at a reasonable rate like he is in this league. And he does have value, and he is getting more playing time and more opportunity with Ottawa. And I think he might be able to reach 40 points. I think he's good. He's smart. He doesn't make mistakes, and he's got a good hockey IQ. He is not the fastest. He doesn't have the best shot. He's none of those things, but he's a good hockey player.
So right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Of the first 6 players who were, or actually the first 9 that were scheduled, 8 have settled. Not surprisingly, I believe Bertuzzi was yesterday, and they went to the hearing. I didn't hear a settlement.
Not yet.
Okay, so
and the spread wasn't that far between the two of them that they couldn't have found a middle ground either.
Right. So most of the time it's going to get settled right before. Allmark was scheduled for today. He got settled last night. Vertanen got settled. The interesting one, October 30th, Josh Ho-Sang, that's going to go to a hearing.
Oh yeah.
Lou's not going to. That will definitely go to a hearing. That I'd be curious to see what. Well, they can't walk away though. That's the thing. They can't walk away unless
the arbitrator is not going to award him. The arbitrator, in my opinion, is going to award him the figure closer to what the team has. I'm not quite sure how Ho-Sang is going to defend asking for any kind of shape, form, or raise above maybe the 10% kicker that you have to give them above his ELC.
See, this is the new system is going to annoy Lou on this one.
Yes,
because this would be the year the Islanders would walk away from him. Correct. If they had the opportunity or the ability to. They don't. Yeah,
he's not going to get awarded. I think it's $4.3 million. He's not going to get awarded that. So they're stuck with either what he offered or what they offered. So he's going to be under contract for another year with them.
I just hope when it's all said and done, maybe Seattle signs him as a free agent and he actually gets a chance to play in the NHL, and we actually get a chance to see him in the NHL. 2 years ago, I felt like he still needed to round out his game because he was a little bit of a risky player and would get the occasional dumb penalties. But there's some talent there. And it would be nice if we could actually see it someday.
Now, just sticking with arbitration here, because I'd say the 2 most curious ones will be the Rangers with Strome and Lemieux. I don't think Lemieux is going to be big money because he didn't score a lot. But Strome, I know Darren Drager this morning said if Strome gets awarded more than 4.3, they might walk. I don't know if that's the case.
Yeah, but he could just – it doesn't matter. Like, they can't absolve themselves of the award.
No. They can walk. If it's above 4.3,
if it's above that,
538 million,
they can
walk away. Okay. But the player has 4 days in which to accept what the team offered him, which is a new nuance this year because of the pandemic.
Right.
So, and they also have to offer him a 10% kicker above what his figure was last year. So they have to come in around the $3.4 million range.
Yeah, so they might want that. Year.
Sure. Right. So in the marketplace, I don't know if somebody else is offering him $3.5 million on a deal right now.
No, I agree. I think, I mean, again, this was a career year for him. I think he's probably going to get awarded like 4.
Yeah, if and I'm sure his agents are very smart. If they're smart, their qualifying offer would be like 4.25, right up to that amount. So there's no way there's no way they even tempt the Rangers to say no thanks.
Right.
So, and Brendan Lemieux,
to me, to me, it's the most interesting one almost in the league, simply because tell me another team that needs a player more because they weren't able to accomplish anything in the offseason to upgrade at that position.
Well, you still have Michael Granlund out there, and not that I think he's an upgrade, but I know there's a lot of people who think the Rangers can make a run at him, and there's also Eric Haula that's out there. I don't think either one of them are necessarily better than Strome. I think Granlund at best is a lateral move, and I'm not sure if I agree with that. And I think Haula is a step down. But there are options that are out there that still are available. Though my viewpoint is for a 1-year deal, depending on the figure, bringing Strome back makes just way too much sense. Yeah. And seeing if the chemistry between him and Panarin is repeatable, and whether or not that it's just the chemistry that existed between the two, as opposed to the uplift in Strome's game after he struggled both on the Islanders and on the Oilers.
Yeah, I would just say with Haula, you're stepping down offensively, but he is better at faceoffs, and he does have a little bit of a physical nature at times. So that is the upside of him. And
at this point, you're probably getting Haula for probably half of what Strome costs.
That's the part that the Rangers are getting beat on no matter what. Right. At the end of this, I think we all could agree, I think even Jan would agree, he's going to make more than he's worth.
Right.
I won't answer the question, but what do you think he's worth is the question. Is $4 million unreasonable?
It's unreasonable.
I think it's much. I'd say in the low.
Why? Because he only did it for 1 year.
Yeah,
I'd say low 3s, like 3.1.
There's other guys who have also only done it for 1 year, and granted they deserved a raise.
1 year out of it.
3.1 million to 4 million. So granted, your viewpoint is he clearly was not worth 3.1 million, and any stretch of the imagination that he was overpaid.
I would actually 3 million would be my cutoff for him, simply because when you look at his body of work, the one difference in his body of work is Panarin. And I've been very positive about Strome. I like him as a guy. I think he does a lot of things well, but there is a monetary cutoff for me with him. And again, I think he's had enough work where we can see that Panarin had an effect on him.
Okay. Now,
so you don't think Panarin had an effect on him?
I don't think there's any question that Panarin had it. But again, we've also shown that just because there's a great player, anybody who plays with them, not every player gets a bump from playing with a great player because they're unable to stay with that player or play off that player well enough to get a.
Let's say the lines change this year and he plays with Kakko and Hedl. What's his? Assuming Hedo's not going to be at the center position,
40 points.
Well, that tells the story. So that's why. And 40's okay, but I can't pay him too much for 40.
So then you're basically saying you can plug and play anybody into that spot, and you'd expect that player to get 60 points.
No, but I could say that there's the Stephane Richer effect with Mario Lemieux, and he would get 38, 35, 38, 40 goals with Lemieux and wouldn't anywhere else, even though he had a good shot.
Rob Brown, Warren Young.
Rob Brown.
Yeah.
Now, Lemieux only had 18 points in 59 games, 111 penalty minutes. So we know what he is. He's not an enforcer, but he's a shit disturber. That's his job. I don't think that translates to big money. So I would be shocked if he gets more than, say, 1.1, 1.2 million, something like that on a 1-year deal.
He was at 9.25 last year. I mean, my view, as I said, is 1.25. I know people think in the 1.5 to 1.7 range, which I could potentially see. He was much better after he came over to the Rangers in the trade initially. Right. I thought last year, while he drew a lot of penalties, he also took a lot of penalties, partially incorrectly due to reputation that he was called on. And he nowhere in shape or form had as good of a year last year as he did after he came to the team. Right. So I think there's a lot of prove it. Look, I think he can be an effective fourth liner, outside shot of moving up to the third line, depending on your configuration. He just needs to be a lot smarter in terms of taking penalties and a lot smarter in terms of his play on the ice.
I think the penalty that kept him, suspended for the beginning of the playoffs kind of hurt his standing with the team. I do, because there has to be a point where even that kind of player who's welcomed has to reel it in. And he has not figured it out yet in his NHL career how to do that. And he has all those other abilities, but he didn't reel it in. And I think that's going to have an effect. Johnny did ask me what I think about Morgan Barron. I had a good chance to see him last year when Cornell was rolling. And Cornell, they actually could have been good enough to win a national championship if all broke right, but we know how this season went. And he may not get a chance to play for the Rangers based on their cap situation. That just may be a reality of life. So I think if he were to get a fair shot, he could have a chance to play. And I think he could play a fourth line role because he's a big, strong kid. But I think based on how tight their cap might be at the end, they may not have any kind of money for him based on these bonuses that are going to have to get paid out and other things.
Is he a center or a winger?
It's a great question. I mean, I've seen him as a center, and he does win faceoffs. To say that I could tell you he's definitely a center at the NHL level, I would be lying. I think I would start him at the wing simply because I've seen him lay enough good checks that I feel like, hey, you could play the wing and pull that off on a fourth line to start, and then let's see where he's at.
I mean, I think the bonus clause's impact has been written before Barron and Kravtsov. I do think, though, if they have a shot, Kravtsov, given especially he's playing the KHL, may get the first shot, but like we discussed, right? If you can get Strome cheaper than you think, or B, if you walk away somehow from Strome and you end up signing, let's say, Haller or Granlund at a much cheaper price,
then they might be able to
open the door to bring these guys in. I'm not quite sure. Look, I've written before and I got taken to task in my blog. Look, I understand the bonus configuration and why the performance bonuses and how you have to retain space in your cap. I also think, look, you're at above the 6.25% or so, and you're at $6 million, then you're another $4 million above that. You're setting aside cap space for something that may never happen.
Right.
So it's almost like you're prospectively giving the guy the bonus already, even though he hasn't earned it, as opposed to being able to look, I'll hold back X percent, but I can extrapolate and put part of that over my salary cap the next 2 seasons. To me, look, and I'm talking selfishly as a Ranger man, have to retain $10 million in cap space of potential bonuses seems a bit foolish to a certain extent.
But the bonus overage hits the next season, so
but you're retaining it now. They have to keep $10 million. They're already $6.25 million with Barron and Kravtsov and others. There's another potential of $3.9 million that you have to keep that space on your books now because it's factored in as a bonus cushion.
Yeah, so it's going to be a problem for some of these young guys to break in this year.
All right, moving on to another contract that happened on late Friday, and I wrote about it on Saturday, which is Travis Dermott signing a 1-year deal with the Leafs for under $900,000, $874, $125. Don't ask me how they get these amounts. It's hilarious.
That is weird, I have to admit.
I mean, it has to be some sort of like percentage of something. It's like, you know, like maybe of his base salary or whatever.
Making 1/25 of the cap.
Right. I don't know what but the funny thing is that there are other players I've seen that amount for, 874, 125. So it's got to be some sort of percentage of something. So I don't know. But all I know is that he's under contract for a year. He's a restricted free agent at the end of this year. The Leafs have all their main players signed. This is the thing, and I like Dermott as a player, but he really hasn't sort of taken the bit and run with it. Maybe it's been opportunity. He's been mostly a bottom pairing situation. Now he doesn't, he signs a 1-year deal. He doesn't have arbitration next year. So he's going to be in the same boat next season, and he'll probably be exposed in the expansion draft. And based on whether he has a good year or not, he may be unprotected, and, they protect Muzzin, Riley, and Brody, and either him or Justin Hall could be the guy that gets claimed by Seattle. But this is a make it or break it year for Dermott, Russ.
Yeah, it is a make it or break it year, but I think he's got talent. We know he could skate. Right now in this era, he's a good puck mover, and you need those guys, and Dubas likes those guys. And so end of the day, I think he'll succeed. The funny thing about the Leafs is if they just had one more defenseman that actually just played defense, we probably wouldn't talk about half of their issues because they'd have a good mix. That's really, I mean, and maybe Liljegren turns into that guy. Maybe, he ends up being that guy over time, or maybe it's somebody else. But that's the one thing they're missing, but it doesn't take away. Dermott's a good player.
Yeah, I mean, the way it looks right now, and this is just charting what might be the case for their depth chart. It's going to be Brody and Riley, Muzzin and Hall as the top four. Muzzin and Hall being the shutdown pairing,
Right.
And then talking about Mikko Lehtinen, the KHL player, Rasmus Sandin, Dermott, Bogosian, Liljegren, all in the mix for the bottom 2-3 spots. So he could be a seventh defenseman starting out this year. He could be on the bottom pairing, or he could, and if we don't know what the situation is going to be with the American Hockey League or what's going on, but that. Those will all be factors. I was looking at, I told you this on the weekend. I was looking at one KHL roster, and this is not indicative of what's going to happen in the NHL, but it could be. One AHL or KHL roster had 43 players that played already, and they've been playing a little over a month.
I'm going to be asking about that soon, because I kind of think, like I said, we've looked at stats for the MHL. I don't know how frequently the MHL is playing, or if all teams have an MHL franchise. I actually don't know that answer. Right. And I think that would unlock the answer to the next thing then, to know that.
Now,
Mike, here's what I think happens. I think Lehtinen gets a shot at seeing significant power play duty as a way to
power play duty. They'll give it to Riley.
I think he may get a shot because honestly, so I remember a couple of years ago, there was a lot of talk that Riley was going to transition more from an offensive defenseman to be more, as he was being used, defensively. Part of the way to kind of take some of the pressure off him and enable him to stay maybe focused a bit more on his own end is to not necessarily pile him up with power play and other duty all the time. I'm not saying it's going to happen, right. But Lehtinen has been a guy who's played the power play in the case. Obviously, he has the experience and could be utilized there depending on what they do to try to, I wouldn't say siphon, but reduce the workload on Riley a little bit to enable him to maybe play a bit more in his own end at times, which helps them defensively, which is where they struggled.
It's possible, but I know they did it with Barry. But Barry, if you didn't do that with Barry, he was basically a bottom pairing defenseman.
Right.
His main claim to fame is as a power play quarterback. I know they're grooming Sandin for that in the future, but next year might be too soon. I believe Brody played second power play with Calgary. It's possible. I mean, I think they'll opt for Riley because that unit has been good and together for 2 seasons until they put Barry in there. So I'm not sure, but we'll see. Another thing I saw on the weekend, which I'm sure Vancouver fans were mightily pleased at. Can't remember who reported it, but it was somebody authoritative that said that the Canucks they have the second buyout window. Because of salary arbitration, they signed Virtanen, but they are not going to buy out anybody. And I saw a lot of reaction online.
We got reaction from JD Burke on off the post.
Yeah, I mean, Russ. I mean, there are Brandon Sutter at 4.375. Let's see, Sven Barchi at 3.3.
Louis Erickson.
Well, no, Louis Erickson doesn't benefit you because Louis Erickson's off signing bonus.
Yeah, but still gets some of it off your books.
Yeah, but not much. I think
right.
I think the cap hit was the savings on the first year of the cap hit was $333,000. It was some ridiculously small amount like that. So it doesn't really have 5.6 in year 1, 3.6 in year 2, and then it goes down for 3 and 4.
The only thing that I could think of, because I've had time to think about it since we talked about it with JD, is maybe this is what ownership wants. Maybe they just like, hey, Jim, you know what? We're only going to let you do so much, and we're not going to, do this buyout. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that because we're still unclear what you could do. And maybe this is like, the last throes of the Benning regime, and that's why they're not doing it.
I mean, you're talking about right now about over $10 million in dead cap space. Oh, actually, excuse me, $16 million in dead.
So that's his dead cap space, right? And maybe they figure we don't want to do it under your regime anymore to let you get out of it. Maybe down the road we'll do it when we feel like we're better and we're actually ready to make that next step. And that may be a move from ownership.
Remember, but Suter and Barchi also expire after the year, right? So the viewpoint also is, look, everything, the overarching concern of everything is finances in general. They always are, but especially this year with the pandemic, not knowing what kind of fan base you're going to have, what kind of revenue you're going to bring. Ownership maybe, look, we're not in the position where we want to start shelling out money just to shell out money.
Correct.
We'd almost be better off. We'll try to muddle through the year. We'll free up $8.3 million between Suter and Barchi by the end of the season. Erickson will have one more year left. Maybe after a year, it makes sense to buy him out and save some cap that way. We know we're going to have to sign Pedersen down the road after this year, basically. We know we're going to have to sign Hughes at the same moment. We don't want to start expending and leaving additional dead cap space on our book. Let us just eat the year, cognizant of what the impact is, and then we'll move on from there after the year, knowing that those dollars are already off the books and we don't have to worry about having to have a dead cap space anyway.
Yeah, but you actually save money on those buyouts.
You're still expending money, but also you're extrapolating for. In other words, Barchi and Suter end this year. You're done. You'll have nothing else remaining on your books, as opposed to buying them out and having next year still sitting on your books with some dead cap space, where you know you have your two big boys you're going to have to figure a way to resign.
All right. I heard some interesting things, and there was an email sent out by the NHL. It was an article by Tom Giolitti on NHL.com saying that January 1st is going to be is the likely starting date, but they're not etching it in stone, but they're still sticking to the 82 game mantra, Russ. And this is the thing: there's not a chance if they start January 1 they're playing 82 games.
I agree.
No chance. So what do I think is behind this? I think they're trying to delay as long as possible the fact that they're not going to be able to play 82 games, because as soon as they announce that they're playing less than 82 games, then the next thing is the PA on the phone on line one saying, okay, what about salaries? Because the next step is prorated salary.
Right. I agree, because I think that's why we're not hearing any of the owners complain about this first 8% that's gone through. For that reason, Bettman has probably met with them and said, look, we're going to see how this plays out. And yeah, you're going to get a lot of complaints from your own guys if we have to cut this season short. And that's exactly what would happen. So right now, let's give the players the money. It's part of the contract. Let's see what happens with the virus. But at the end of the day, yeah, if they play 48 games or 60 games, something like that, players are going to be mad because they're already mad because they're only making 72% of their salary anyhow. And end of the day, they are putting that off.
Now, Jan, one of the things that Drager said is that the NHL is doing a cost-benefit analysis per team. And when he said per team, that rang a bell with me because, and I said to Russ this morning, is it possible that like certain teams, and I'll use Arizona as an example, if they have to start the season with no fans in the stands, that they say basically, well, we can't play. We can't, we're going to lose so much money. It's more of a benefit for us not to play, that some teams won't play this season because they just simply can't afford it.
I don't think you can do that. I mean, you can have disparate and different views in terms of having some opt in and some opt out in terms of playing in general. It's got to be a collective whole, regardless of what some owners think. I mean, I think the good part is they're going to have, as they mentioned, and I posted in my blog, what Michael Russo had a really good column and had a ton of information in there. Pierre LeBrun early in the week, and obviously Larry Brooks had some information also yesterday in the Post. And having the return to play committee is a very good idea, because I do think you get the collaborativeness between the two of them, as Russ talked about, right? You're paying the 8% now. We all know proration is going to be a substantive topic that's going to have to be talked. The players are already taking a hit on escrow. Now you're going to say, oh, by the way, I'm going to pay you 50% of your 80%. That's not going to go over well in selling that. Look, and there are, Eck posted thing, well, should you have more outdoor games? I think outdoor games in general are an idea, but the problem is, how much is it going to cost you to put on the game? It's all wonderful and good if you can get 18 or 20,000 in, but if it's costing you double or triple of a normal game to put on those games,
it costs $1 million.
Perspective, you're losing money.
It's $1 million just for the ice machine, and that's not the rent that they get charged for whatever venue they're using.
Right? Are they going to have double headers at Lake Louise? I mean, it's just
it's a good idea. I mean, I think it's a wise idea if you could pull it off. I think there's the cost benefit, right? But things that are being talked about, I know that a lot of talk came out in terms of maybe a rapid vaccine, but not a rapid test that they would do at the airports to prevent the 14-day
Right.
No quarantine period. That may be a way of avoiding the border issues, and that may scuttle some of that talk of the Canadian division that's been talked about. We've talked. The hub cities are another topic of conversation that are a major topic of conversation. Are you going to do anything with the start date? Are you going to have a shortened season? All this is still. They can say January 1st, but we all know all of this is up in the air. Look, the NBA originally said December 1, then it became January 1, then it became January 18. Now it's become December 22nd. And why December 22nd? Because there's supposedly a $500 million impact of starting on that date as opposed to starting the third week of January. That's a pretty good reason to start potentially early. But even then, I don't know if they're going to be able to pull it off either.
Right. There's a lot of logistics. I think we're going to get an email right around the second week of December outlining how this season's going to go and not before.
Right. And that'll hold the feet to the fire of the PA that, okay, well, we got to get something as opposed to nothing, because, the only option then is, okay, let's shut down until September. And then
I know that there's probably some players that say, yeah, maybe they prefer to do what Mike just said. I'm sure there are. I'm sure there's plenty that have made a lot of money, but there's also ones that haven't. But the weird part is the way this is going to shake out is at some point, and Jen maybe said this, 4 or 5 days ago, it's like going to your boss. He could value you as your best employee and agree with you that you should get a raise. But at the end of the day, if he only has so much to pay you, you then have to just make the decision. Am I going to play or not? Is it worth it to me or not? And that's probably whatever the number is going to be. That's probably what it's going to happen to be, because this is going to be a year where I don't think Bettman is going to be able to, I don't want to say cave, but acquiesce to fear and pay the players, as much as they possibly can, because the owners have already lost. They don't want to lose so much again.
So fuck, you mentioned it already, where we talked about it. The guys who are in the lower tier are the ones who are going to get hurt the most. What may end up happening, and not advocating this, but it wouldn't surprise me, you may have a tiering system on the proration based upon your salary structure, right?
Yeah, I can see it.
And that way, the guys who are at the lower end of the spectrum will end up being able to be made a bit more whole than those at the upper end of the spectrum. And it's maybe considered unfortunate, but that's kind of, if you're making $10 million a year, you may argue taxing the rich. I get it, right? But should the guy who's making 700 end up coming home with 400, when you're coming home with 6 million? I understand that there may needs to be figured out, but also, like they did last year, you may have to add this back the last couple of years of the salary cap, right? That may be a catch up down the road, and that's why having the return to play committee and fleshing out all these ideas in excruciating detail and making sure you get complete buy-in by the players, because you need to have collective bargaining here and a collective viewpoint that everybody's in the same boat. But the owner is going to have to come clean in terms of where they really are also, which has been a big issue over the years when it comes to negotiations.
One thing that factors into that, Jan, though, is like the top players, I'll use, for example, like for the Leafs, Matthews, Tavares, Marner, all got paid their bonuses on July 1. Their base salaries are relatively low. So there's, you're not going to get, they're going to have to pay back money in escrow at the end of the year, but you're not going to get anything in terms of shaving their amount, because are you shaving as the base salary? You're not shaving the overall salary of $11 million for Tavares. That's already mostly been paid. So
it's not ideal. It's not. That's why you've seen a lot more salaries this year, less on the signing bonuses.
The other thing I was going to say is, because it's being asked in the chat room, what if the AHL doesn't play? Well, that labor union's the PHPA, and they don't have a lot of power. There is a possibility here that a lot of players won't get paid. Now, the ones that are on the cap that would have been sent to the AHL, they'll have them just trot around and be either a scratch, or they'll have these large taxi squads.
They won't. They won't
count.
They won't count against the cap. They can't.
No, they won't count against the cap for that. But whatever bonus they got for signing their ELC or whatever, those kinds of things, that's it. That's all they're going to get.
Now, the other thing I want, just, on the off chance that, there is no season. Remember when there was a season in 2004, or the season was canceled 2004-05, the contracts, everybody's contracts went forward. It's like if you had a year left in your contract, going into that year, you were a free agent after the 2004-05 season, even though there was no 2004-05 season. In this instance, with a pandemic, that may not be the case, Russ. There might be language in the standard player contract that you need to actually, there had to be some sort of year for it to elapse forward. Like I know, for example, like the Leafs have 4 years of Austin Matthews. They don't want the 1 year to elapse where he doesn't play. They want that year. Yeah. So, and a lot of other teams, have signed players to 1 year contracts. I'm sure those players want those contracts instead of re-signing for another year. So, there's a lot of things that would go into what would happen with this league if all of a sudden they had to cancel and go to September of next year.
Yeah, that 04-05 year, I ended up just covering the AHL, and I was covering the Phantoms all the time. And it was interesting because that was the 1 year where the NHL actually let like 19-year-olds play in the AHL. So like Patrice Bergeron was in the AHL. He was playing, and it was an amazing league. Like there was all of a sudden this influx of tremendous talent, but there also were a lot of players that just retired because they said, you know what, I'm not waiting for this to come back around. I'm done. And if they were to miss the year, you could expect some of that.
Well, sorry. One thing is, Russo wrote it also, right? You could end up, what happening is you have teams in quasi hubs for 2-3 weeks, have games, return home, be home for a week or so, and come back. Now, granted, you have issues with COVID and everything else, but they're not going to be able to put people in a hub for 3 months. It's going to be impossible from a separation perspective. The league, the players, even if the league would end up proposing it, I don't think the players would acquiesce to that, which means you'd have to find a kind of a hybrid kind of a situation to enable them still to be some interaction with their families.
It's going to be an MLB situation. It's going to be basically traveling to cities. They're going to quarantine in place, which may not work because we saw how bad it was at the beginning of the MLB, but that's what I think is going to. There's no way they're going to agree to hubs. I think
no, they won't.
You're going to see
not hubs, bubbles.
Excuse me. You're going to see an altered schedule where it's going to be like Major League Baseball, where if a team plays, if the Island or say if the Sabres play the Leafs, they'll play in Toronto 2 games back to back, and then it'll be over with for the season. And then in Buffalo they'll play back to back, and then it'll be over with.
Look at how our jobs changed. It's now we talk about hubs and bubbles and potential games, and we don't know what the hell's going on.
It's all
being figured out on the fly, which is what you have to do.
It's just incredible.
The only certainty is uncertainty right now.
Right.
Now, another report from Sports Business Journal, Sports Pro Media, excuse me.
Hold on. I do want to answer Thomas.
Yeah.
Because he just had a great thing, and then you could push the questions up. But he said, is it over in Russia, the pandemic? No, actually, I know somebody from Russia that just came here and vacationed a bit and was in Florida and basically told me that Florida was way more observant of the pandemic than they are in all of Russia. So if that gives you an idea of how because we know Florida is not the best in this country for it, that gives you an idea of how it's being treated in Russia. But no, it's not over at all.
Now, there's a report, and it's a couple days old, that now the ratings for the Stanley Cup final were down 61% from the previous year. And obviously, I think the effect there was the NBA, Major League Baseball, the NFL
all at once.
Tampa Bay, Dallas wasn't exactly a marquee matchup.
That's it.
But the contract for U.S. broadcasting rights is up with NBC after next season. And this report says that both ESPN and Fox Sports are greatly interested in the NHL. Now, if the NHL can get a bidding war going between these entities, then they might be able to make a lot more than the $2 billion that they made on the 10-year deal. I think they'll definitely make more than $2 billion on the 10-year deal on the next lease. Maybe they'll have a shorter contract, but I don't know. The thing I'm concerned about with ESPN, I don't trust ESPN as far as I can throw them, but that the games would be regulated to ESPN2.
Oh, yeah, they're going to have that problem. I mean, they could say whatever they want to Gary Bettman, and he's going to remember when they did that to him, and they will do it again. Like, this is what ESPN does. I would rather work with Fox simply because they have their regional networks, and the regional networks will work better for hockey than just having it play in ESPN, because the times that you're going to have a game on regular ESPN aren't going to be as much as you think they are. And that's going to be the problem.
I think
they have. Let me just, Jan. They have Fox Sports 1. They have the regional networks. They have Fox Sports 1, which is like the equivalent of ESPN or ESPN 2.
Right.
And then at the Stanley Cup Finals, they can put it on Fox on the network.
Right.
So that's, I think that
I would prefer Fox. I forgive them for the glowing puck, and I would rather see
glowing puck.
I didn't like it at the
time.
They
were attempting to reach out to a casual fan base and making the game easier to follow for those that are not watching. And look, and ESPN screwed up years ago. I think ESPN's going to go very hard after the NHL. I think they're going to put certain games on the regular ESPN and their streaming network. And I also think they will use ESPN Plus to a certain extent. They already have the recap show that Linda Cohn was hosting that they did on ESPN. I do think, and they also have multiple other ESPNs that they can put it on, ESPN2, ESPN Network. There's a bunch of them they can use. I think ESPN is looking for a way to get an entree back into it. And as you said, a bidding war probably would be the best thing, because the league needs revenue, given what's going on and the lack that they're having a fan base coming on board.
Yeah, but Fox has more money and better ratings.
Well, what I question is whether.
Wait, so you're going to tell me that ESPN gets better ratings than Fox?
No.
Jan's moving his head around.
Wait, which Fox?
Fox. We'll start with the major channel. Fox outdraws ESPN.
Okay. Well, it's regular TV.
Right. I
don't know if they're putting it on regular TV.
Well, like Mike said, the Stanley Cup would be on regular TV, like it is with NBC.
Probably would have it on the national, like Major League Baseball. They would have the World Series on Fox. They probably would have.
You go to John Smoltz again?
Yeah, no, they have Tom Glavine, since he played hockey.
Okay, good. LA draft pick 4th round probably doesn't help.
What I'm wondering is whether the NHL would limit themselves to assigning themselves all to one network, or whether they follow the NBA and do TNT, ESPN.
I think you're going to split it up.
I think they're going to do both, because it increases their revenue stream. It increases their ability for advertising, more importantly, and it increases their ability to broaden the network of people who get interested in the sport, thereby adding potential revenue to the coffers. They'd be dumb not to try to have both parties.
Right.
All right, take some questions from the chat and then one on the show. Kevin Dunn asked, do you think some vets will go back to Europe to play?
I think they'd be playing already. I think when we saw that there was injury that happened with the Kings, and then all of a sudden the Kings pulled back a couple of their young players, Turcotte being one of them. It was Madden who had the injury. I think there's still a worry about that. Now, Joe Thornton was already there before the Leafs signed him, so nothing you could do. But I think the ones that are there are going to stay there until the NHL starts up, but I don't think there's going to be a flood of guys anymore. There's not a lot of jobs left.
Yeah, one of the Leaf prospects, I won't try to say his name. I always refer to him as SDA.
Right.
Who's a Russian prospect who played with Peterborough. He just was loaned to Torpedo in the KHL. And this is the thing. There have been so many players loaned over there. They're only going to NHL teams are probably only loaning these players to these teams unless they guarantee that they're going to play.
That's a good – so yeah, that's Nybeck for Carolina. He's only getting 7 minutes a game with HV71. So now they're threatening to move him to another team. GMs are working hard, man. I'm telling you, there's going to be a point where they're just going to stop and have to just focus directly on the team. But they are trying to place as many of these guys, prospects and otherwise.
Yeah. Thomas in the chat, why do they have fans in the stands in Russia if it's bad there? Because they don't care.
They don't care.
They don't care. They really don't. It's like they want them. They're concerned about making money.
In Russia, I see people walking around the malls. There's no masks. If you feel like that's great, then go to Russia and check it out.
Okay, Michael in the chat, what are the alternatives to the NHL draft lottery process that GMs have been discussing?
This is the Yzerman effect. This is Steve Yzerman. The last couple of years has gotten jerked around in the draft, and I do think there's a point. Yes, the old weighted system isn't probably right, and yes, this system isn't probably right, and they did change it for this year too, right? So I have no problem if they go back to the drawing board. I don't think you want to be the NFL, because then all of a sudden you want to 100% tank and don't really want to play your season. But I do think there's a happy medium somewhere.
Just going to have to weight it more. It's probably, again, it's not perfect, but I think it's going to happen. You're just going to have to wait that if you have the worst record, you have a much better shot at getting the first overall pick. And maybe you need to do a sequencing of selections where it's not just one lottery ball. Maybe it's multiple and trying something. Not that it's ideal, but maybe that may be a way of doing it also. Well,
Brian Burke had been saying all during the lottery process that the fact that the Red Wings were so bad that, at the absolute worst, they should go back to like the 2015, 2016, actually it was 2015 model where if you finished dead last, the furthest you could finish was second. It would only drop one.
Oh, that's fine. I go back to my idea of a few years ago where you just have GM arm wrestling. You want that pick bad enough, you have to win an arm wrestle.
And Russ would find a way to sell it too.
Yeah. Can you imagine it'd be like Over the Top starring Steve Yzerman? Because Yzerman would be working through.
I take Yzerman in that fight.
That's what I'm saying. He'd be working through all the other guys, and it would be great. Great drama.
So Anaheim is going to hire George Peros as their general manager.
He's doing a bang-up job in the Department of Player Safety right now.
Yeah.
No cage match. It was
not a cage match. No.
What can we expect a Hockey Buzz Seattle protection mock draft? Well, I think we have a Seattle blogger. So
and he's doing one right now that he's reached out to a bunch of guys like I did my mock draft, and he's having one representative for each team providing who they would be protecting and who's not protected and why, and he's making a selection based upon that list in terms of who we would select in building a team player by player.
Now, the funny thing is, I used Cap Friendly's Seattle calculator tool to tweet out a protection list for the Leafs, and it illustrated that the Leafs are probably going to expose both Justin Hall and Travis Dermott because now they have Muzzin, Barry, and Riley. They're going to protect all three. Anderson's a free agent, so they're going to protect Jack Campbell as the goaltender. But they right now don't have a goalie under contract other than Campbell for next year. So they would have to re-sign Aaron Dell or re-sign Frederik Andersen to have a goalie that they could expose in the expansion draft. So
I think they're going to re-sign Dell. And Dermott signed a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal?
1-year deal.
Huh? 2-year? One, so he can't be protected. Well, he's an RFA, so technically he wouldn't be protected anyway.
Well, he's an RFA. His rights they'll expose him.
I don't think it works that way with the protection, though. I'll have to go back and check. I don't think so.
I'm with the goal.
They can be claimed by the other team, yes. But you can't necessarily protect him.
Right? No. I think they would have to sign him, but yeah, no. But they're not going to. I don't think they're going to protect him, and they don't even have enough right now. They don't have enough forwards, and this is the thing. The limitations were 70 games over 2 years or 40 games from the previous season to be qualified to be exposed. They're going to have to rejig those numbers because last season was shortened and this season is probably going to be a shortened season. But right now they don't have two forwards to expose an expansion that meet those criteria. Yep. So they're going to have to expose like Pierre Engvall if he plays 20 games and then they're going to find somebody else. So interesting stuff, but we will discuss more of that tomorrow when Ack should be back on the show. Thank you guys. For Jan Levine, not departed. For Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching, and remember, without the buzz,